Hi, friends. Welcome back to Page Turner Weekly. This week's reading wrap up is a little different from the usual, and that's because it's a recap of my April participation in the Bowel Cancer Awareness Readathon that is hosted by the brilliant Charlie Brook. Now, booktube is often such a thoughtful and caring community, and this readathon is yet another example of how readers show up not just for the stories, but for each other. It's often said that reading builds empathy, but Charlie's prompts take that further, asking us not only to step into someone else's shoes, but to become more present in our own. So, how often are you asked, "How are you?" and automatically reply, "I'm fine, and you?" without even thinking? I'm not suggesting you start listing your most concerning symptoms to the cashier at Tesco. Other supermarkets are available, but maybe that question could be a moment to actually check in with yourself and think, "Am I okay?" In this readathon, each prompt was linked to a symptom of bowel cancer, turning books into these quiet nudges to reconnect with our bodies. It's clever, it's gentle, and it works. So today I'm walking you through the books I read for each prompt and how one of them sent me on a calm YouTube detour involving fountain pens. So let's begin. Read on the cover, symptom, blood in your poo, bleeding from your bottom. This book is When Stars Are Scattered by Victoria Jamieson and Omar Mohamed. I picked it because Omar's t-shirt on the cover is red. Okay, so this one broke me a little in the best way. It's a middle grade graphic memoir based on Omar's experience growing up in a Kenyan refugee camp after fleeing Somalia. You think that you're prepared because you know what it's about, and it's illustrated and looks approachable. And then it quietly devastates you. The pacing is perfect. It doesn't rush trauma, but it also doesn't dwell in misery, even though Omar and Hassan's circumstances would certainly justify it. The camp, while described as temporary, gradually becomes its own sort of community with different neighborhoods as well, a patchwork of interlinked neighborhoods full of life. So there's so much heart here. The relationship between Omar and his nonverbal brother Hassan is at the center, but warmth radiates outward to neighbors, teachers, and particularly memorable, a social worker towards the end of the book. So, yeah, it's a book that I will be handing people for years to come, and I have just given it to my mum and would love to hear her thoughts on it. Now, this is also a prompt double up because it is also a book that we're reading for April and May for the YA middle grade strand of the Reading the Globe read along. And the live show will be in June, so do join us for a deeper discussion of the book then. Prompt: a book under 400 pages. The symptom: unexplained weight loss. And the book I went for is The Tokyo Suite. Now, this is a taut, emotionally layered domestic novel that turns modern motherhood into a slow burning psychological drama. It's translated with clarity and nuance by Bruna Dantas Lobato. It's a Brazilian novel centering on two women, Fernanda, an overworked TV exec, and Maju, her live in nanny. Their lives are intimately and unequally intertwined as they share care of 4-year-old Cora. Mostly Maju, the worker, has the largest part of that care duty. So we have an interlinking or a duet of the narrative going back and forth between the two. Fernanda is the kind of woman who remodels the maid's quarters into a sleek, minimal space that she dubs the Tokyo Suite, so don't expect us to jet off to Tokyo. It is just that room. It's a gesture of liberal guilt, but it doesn't really bridge the emotional, economic gulf between the two women. Maju, in the meantime, has sacrificed her personal relationships and prospects for this job unintentionally and becomes increasingly isolated, so much so that her bond with Cora deepens to the extent that she can't imagine not being with this girl or for the job to end. There are no simple villains here. Both women really evoke empathy and a huge discomfort. I personally found Fernanda difficult to relate to. She's caught up in an affair, numbing herself with wine and weed, obsessively checking her phone for messages from her lover, while dodging calls from her husband and from her nanny from Maju, who wants to talk about the kid. Marjorie, on the other hand, has known violence and instability and has never really had someone she can truly just rely on. Her fear of losing Cora, the little girl, really pushes her into an act of desperation. And through their parallel narratives, Madalosso really forces us to consider how care, especially the emotional labor of childcare, is often outsourced to those with the least power, and how the myth of perfect motherhood also haunts all involved in this book. She's not afraid of difficult questions. What does it mean to mother a child who isn't yours? What does it cost to seek love, stability, or autonomy when the world has already placed limits on your life? Next prompt is self care. Symptom: feeling tired all the time. Self care choice up to you. So I decided to watch a favorite non booktube channel or channels. So this was on the weekend, and I didn't reach for, a bubble bath or book. I went to YouTube, specifically looking up fountain pen and journaling channels that I love. I spent the most peaceful hours watching videos about nibs, inks, writing samples, and notebook layouts, and then spent the rest of my weekend in between walking Milo and doing chores rediscovering my own pens. I haven't even put away the demo pens, so they're all still here, and I've enjoyed using them. Also, revisiting inks. I've been enjoying small sample vials of color, subtle blues, rich greens, inky violets I'd forgotten because I've been sticking to my trusty Waterman black and Alta Parker Quink in black. Anyway, there's something quietly nourishing about reconnecting with these analog joys, writing slowly, watching the ink dry on paper, and I highly recommend it if you need your brain to sort of like rest and simply be. Anyway, I could talk about pens for ages, so I'm going to limit myself to read a book outside your norm. So the symptoms include a change in bowel habits, and for me, a change in the genre of book is to go for body horror. So I went with A Sunny Place for Shady People. And again, this is another doubling up of books that match more than one read along, since this is also our Reading the Globe adult contemporary pick for April, and a bit of a genre challenge for me. I like to think I read widely, but I know that I avoid body horror and I had to brace for it. Now, this collection felt like stepping into a distorted mirror world. Enriquez writes this gothic horror that's unapologetically political, viscerally emotional, and is drenched in dread. One story had me thinking, okay, this is about grief like the first story. And by the end, I was like, no, I think this is just really about death literally crawling through the walls. I'm still pondering it. I think the easiest story to interpret in terms of the real life themes it explores really was that first story called My Sad Dead, which gave me an understanding that Argentina has these wealthy gated communities which sit side by side with the poorest neighborhoods or slums. The way she writes is unnerving and clever, and it's definitely not a comfort read. But sometimes your reading habits just need to be jolted, and if you like dark fiction that doesn't flinch, I would say this collection will stay with you. We'll be discussing this book in more detail during the live show in May on this channel, so do join us then. Next up, the prompt is revisit a soft DNF or an avoided book, and this mirrors the symptom, a pain or lump in your tummy. I went with Same Bed, Different Dreams by Ed Park. The chaotic epic that once made me press pause on the audiobook and think, did my brain just melt a little? I immediately went, not today. But I circled back for this readathon thanks to the prompt, and also because Lindy from Magpie Reads brought it to my attention again during our live show discussion over on Roz's channel, Scally Dandling About the Books, when we were talking about We Do Not Part by Han Kang. Okay, so this book is still chaotic, and I still had to read it slow, but there's method to the madness that I finally got, and it references Korean poet Yi Sang, and that reminded me I have a book of poetry by Yi Sang, so I would put that back on my TBR, sort of like higher up. And it did eventually pull me in. The book is sprawling, genre fluid, intellectually dense. It has spy plots, alternate histories, footnotes, metafiction, satire. It's doing so much, and I understand why the first time I felt a little dizzy by it. But it's like a puzzle that, you can piece together. Be aware that by the time you have the completed picture, it doesn't mean that you know everything that's happened. It's not a warm blanket sort of book, but it is bold. And sometimes you need a book that just leaves you feeling a little bit confused at the end, but also sort of better enlightened about certain things. And I'm struggling to describe that, but because of the alternate histories that it explores in terms of what Korea or different careers could have looked like, it uses real life characters and even talked about the first president of South Korea. Also, I was like, why is he called Sigmund? Anyway, I don't want to give away all of the details of this book, but I will certainly recommend it if you're into speculative fiction. This readathon wasn't just clever, it was genuinely meaningful. Each prompt offered a quiet but powerful reminder to check in with ourselves. In a world full of distraction, noise, and constant external demands, that's no small thing. So if something's been feeling off, don't ignore it. Trust your gut and talk to your general practitioner, to your local doctor. Early detection really does save lives. And while we're here, thinking about your symptoms is not just about bowel cancer awareness. Yes, this readathon was about bowel cancer awareness, but it can be anything. I want to recommend Biblio Sophie's incredibly honest video about her experience with lymphoma. So, in this case, the way her symptoms were initially dismissed and misdiagnosed is a stark reminder of how important it is to advocate for yourself, and I'll link her video below. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or if you've ever returned to a DNF and had a completely different experience the second time around. Now, my experience wasn't particularly entirely different with Same Bed, Different Dreams, but I felt in a different headspace. Huge thanks again to Charlie Brook for putting together such a thoughtful, purpose-driven challenge. And in the meantime, treat yourself to a book, a quiet YouTube video, or maybe even a solo date. In fact, a friend of mine recently told me she took the train into Cambridge for a flotation therapy session at a place called Float Well, and that's really sounding tempting. It's where you drift weightlessly in Epsom salt water. Is it Epsom salt saturated water? And then you're cocooned from the outside world, and she swears by it. I'm honestly so tempted to give it a try this spring or summer. So these kinds of things aren't about indulgence, they're restorative. They help rebalance our nervous systems, reduce stress hormones, and remind us what it feels like to be in our bodies and be more connected to them. And let's be honest, if we want to show up for the people in our lives, we have to be in good condition ourselves. So, yes, give yourself that hour. You need it, you deserve it, and see you next week.